You're listening to a weekly podcast made by Miami Dolphin fans for Miami Dolphin fans. Your source for entertaining Dolphin news, insight, and general conversation. Here's your host, Michael Fink.
Hey everyone, this is Mike. The Finfans podcast is part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. And today is Monday. Yesterday was a giant letdown, and I'm here today with Louis Ragone. Good morning, Louis.
Good morning, Michael. Hello, Dolphins. Rough day yesterday, like you said.
My eyes are still bleeding.
Your eyes are bleeding, huh?
That's a bad football game to watch, especially the third quarter.
We just talked about headaches, and I've had it since the second half of that game yesterday, and it hasn't gone away. So next week's game can't come soon enough. Yeah, it was rough. I mean, that was a bad effort all the way around.
It was a bad effort. That's a good description.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, bad effort. 3-11. You're playing a team that was 2-11, right?
Yeah.
No, we were 3-10 going into yesterday. They were 2-11.
They're two equally matched teams record-wise. They're two equally matched teams disappointment-wise.
Yes.
So you would figure it would have been a more competitive game, and they were competitive in the first half. It was a decent game up till halftime, but I just felt like in the third quarter things just got away from them. And to me, I attribute it all to the offensive line, and I know the defense was poor too, but I think the offensive line is so poor that it really puts the team in a bad situation and makes the defense's job even harder than it already is.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line is and was yesterday the problem over and over again. Come out in the first half, 10-play drive, and we miss a field goal. The Giants go 5 plays, they punt, get the ball right back to us. We drive down the field, and we have a 4th and 1, and Laird gets hit for a 3-yard loss. I mean, what does that tell you? Offensive line-wise, it's a constant issue.
You could tell he wanted to go off tackle. It wasn't there, and he tried to string it out.
I think on that particular, are you talking about that particular play, the 4th and 1? Because he did that on the safety as well, Laird. But
that's what I'm thinking of. Yes,
you're thinking of the safety on 4th and 1, Mike. He just got obliterated. He got blew up on that play.
Yeah.
They tried to run off right guard, and he just got annihilated. Somebody came right through, unblocked, and just destroyed him. And basically, the first quarter's over, and we had put 2 decent drives together, and we have a big goose egg on the scoreboard. And again, that does fall back on the offensive line. I'm not going to give the defense as much credit as you will.
I wasn't giving him credit.
Okay, in the second half, I misunderstood what you were saying there.
What I said was the offensive line sets the tone for the team. And when they stall drives, when they play poorly, the defense is on the field more, and it makes them look worse than they probably are. And not that they're good, but you get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. But, with that being said, Mike, we dominated the whole first quarter. The defense was not on the field much in the first quarter.
No, you're right. We had the ball 7 minutes more than they did the first half.
Right. And, you go in the halftime with a lead, and then you come out in the third quarter and you're just getting blown up in every way. The defense did have, 3 interceptions yesterday?
Yep.
And, they did make a few plays, but in between those interceptions, and some of them were just bad reads by Manning. I mean, that one ball he threw over the middle, granted, Baker made a great play on it, but it was a bad read by Manning. He just made a few mistakes, but in the third quarter, Mike, it was just horrible all the way around defensively. It was terrible. Absolutely
had Miami taken advantage of those opportunities in the first half, maybe it's a different game.
Yeah, right, exactly. And, the bottom line is that you go into halftime and you've got a lead. And regardless of what we did in the first half, you've got a second half to play, and you've got to play through it. And this team has done that. They've played a very strong 4 quarters in most of the games this year. Yesterday was disappointing in the fact that you just didn't see that. In the second half, I mean, they gave up 29 points to a team that has struggled offensively to some extent. They do have players. There's no question about it. But, when you compare what they have done up to this point in the season and then what they did yesterday to us, it is disappointing. And I understand that we're shorthanded on the defensive side of the football, but to get dominated by a team like this to where they put up close to 30 points in a half of football, I mean, that it just wasn't a good effort, Mike. It just wasn't.
No, it was probably one of the poorer efforts we've seen in the second half of the season.
Absolutely, very, very disappointing game. Honestly, across the defense, I honestly don't know. Other than the few interceptions we had, I really can't put a finger on one player that played well at all out there yesterday.
I can name a couple.
Who do you got?
Jerome Baker.
Okay.
He did not embarrass himself. He played well in coverage. He tackled well.
He had a nice return on that interception, too. Yeah. He looked like a running back out there. Maybe we should play him at running back.
Maybe we should.
Stick him in there and let's see what he can bring to the table behind that offensive line.
We'll have to send Flores a message. Vince Beagle played a respectable game. Monte Heritage played a decent game. Godshow played a decent game. And a new face, Zach Zeiler, played a decent game.
Okay.
And that's about all I got.
Well, here's the pattern, Mike, and it's been consistent in regard to what our defense is giving up. Every single week, the opponent's lead running back usually goes over 100. And again, it happened yesterday. Barkley had 112 and 2 touchdowns. Their number one receiver goes over 100 yards. Shepard had 111 yesterday. And Manning had close to 300 yards passing.
You can tell that you play fantasy football.
Well, you can tell that I pay attention to the Dolphin games as well and what the trends are. The thing is that every single week, whoever we're playing, the running back is getting over 100, or the combination of running backs are getting over 100 if teams go that route. Their number one receivers are going over 100 week in and week out. And, it's a problem. And, right now we are very shorthanded in the secondary. I keep saying, we do have a lot of guys up front that we were depending on that I think have been somewhat disappointing this year. I mean, you mentioned Baker. He had a pretty solid game yesterday. Overall, I think he's been a disappointment. Wilkins, our number one pick, has been a disappointment. I haven't seen enough out of him to where I'm overly thrilled at this point. And we'll give him the benefit of the doubt because he is a rookie, but he's playing a position to where, you've got guys lined up in front of you and you got to dominate them. That's what you do at the defensive tackle. And I just haven't seen it, especially over the last 2 weeks against very subpar offensive lines. I think that, the Giants and then the Jets last week, I just felt that we were going to get a lot more out of our guys up front, and it just has not developed. So, it's somewhat disappointing in regard to their play up front. Again, the secondary, we're very shorthanded. There's guys out all over the place. So you expect it there, but you expect a little bit more from the guys up front, and we're not getting it right now.
No, we're not. And, you can point a lot of different directions. The team is not good, Lewis. They're not good on either side of the ball. So,
right.
We can point to Wilkins. We can point to the guys on the offensive line. I didn't think Fitzpatrick played as well the last couple of weeks as he had previously. Not that he was bad yesterday, but, he put the ball on the ground once, and I just didn't feel like his passes were always crisp and on target. And I think he had like 7 drop passes yesterday, which is...
And I was going to mention that. His numbers were... they were there were drop passes all over the place. I think
Yeah.
Laird had 2 or 3 alone. So go ahead, finish your thought.
Well, it was everybody. There wasn't, you can't say this section of the team really played well yesterday. I just thought it was a collectively poor effort. And they looked like they were, in pack your suitcase mode. And I know they weren't, but that's what it kind of looked like in the second half, Just like you said, a poor effort. And when you come out at this time of year and give a poor effort, it makes people think that maybe you're quitting. Now, obviously, these kids can't afford to quit. They've got to put the best film they can out there, either for Miami or for somebody else. So I know they weren't quitting. I don't think anybody really intentionally quit, but it looked like it just from a visual perspective watching that game.
Yeah, and Mike, if you look at the team and the more film that you have week to week as teams prepare for us, I mean, if you're a defense and you're coming in against our offense, I mean, we're one-dimensional. It's that simple. I mean, all you're doing is you're trying to lock in on Parker and you're trying to stop Fitzpatrick. And that's basically where it ends. You're not concerned about the running game. And, to their credit, you mentioned a lot of drop balls yesterday. I mean, in that first half, Fitzpatrick looked very good. He was spreading the ball around. They did an extremely good job as far as moving the football. Now, they didn't get into the end zone on a few occasions in the first quarter. It does matter, but I think it has more to do with the offensive line. We're going to go back to them and not being able to block on a fourth.
There's no question that if they were better, he'd be better. He's proven that much over the course of the season.
Absolutely. So, when you're coming in and you're preparing for this team, there's just not a lot to honestly prepare for. You've got a couple of guys you need to worry about, Fitzpatrick being one of them, and you try to take the things that he loves to do away from him. And the Giants did a pretty decent job in the second half when we fell behind. Now you move over to the defensive side of the football, and what are you concerned about when you're preparing as an offense for this Dolphin defense? There's nobody you're going to avoid throwing against. I mean, you can throw the ball anywhere on the field against our secondary. You're not concerned with a pass rush, and teams have been able to run the football on us. So they're doing pretty much everything they want to do. So again, as the season progresses and there's more film on the guys that are out there and what we're trying to do week in and week out, we're a very simple team to prepare for. There's just not a lot of talent out there right now. And
Nate Brooks had a target on his back yesterday.
Oh, absolutely.
And, Eli couldn't throw at him too many times,
Mm-hmm. Right. So, I mean, this is the position we're in, and it is what it is. It was a bad effort. There's no question about it. But I think over these next couple of weeks, you're going to see a lot more of this type of thing because, we say it over and over again. We are what we are. It's just that simple. I mean, nothing's going to change with this team. I mean, you hope that Wilkins plays a little bit better over these last couple of games. Maybe Van Ginkel, some of the younger guys, start to play up to what we were expecting or hoping out of them. And, that's all you can really hope for. All these other guys that are basically just being plugged in there to replace guys that are injured right now. This is what you're going to get out of him. I mean, Laird had a horrible game yesterday. Dropped passes. He made some bad decisions when he was running the football. The safety comes to mind. I mean, that was an important play in the game because what happened was they get the safety and then we punt to them and they score a touchdown on that possession right after they
gave up, 34-yard return on that kick?
A 34-yard return. It took them 3 plays. They went 40 yards, Mike, in 3 plays, and they're in the end zone. And now all of a sudden it's a 23-13 game.
Right.
9-point swing right there. So, I mean, it's plays like that, and it's the offensive line, and it's the guys. I mean, Laird's our what? He's now our third, fourth running back that we've used because Walton was in the mix there for a while as well. So we're down to basically our fourth option at running back. I mean, even at receiver, you've lost Grant in the slot. You lost Preston Williams on the outside. You've got guys out there like Isaiah Ford who are on the practice squad most of the season. So, you factor all that in, and this is the product, and this is the team, and we are what we are right now. There's a lot of pieces of the puzzle missing, and it's affecting a lot of the guys that are still on the field. I mean, maybe Wilkins becomes better, Mike, if he starts getting some help from the defensive ends. The guy playing next to him on the outside and on the other end.
Our ends are terrible, both of them.
Yes, so
neither of them can contain the run. They're just not good ends. Moss and Charlton is who I'm speaking of.
Mm-hmm.
And, you've got to get guys there who can play the position, not just rush the passer and not just play the run, but do both.
Absolutely. Yep. And, at Parker, I mean, let's mention a few guys, Mike, that had decent games yesterday. I mean, Parker comes back. I don't think he practiced an awful lot this week.
No, of course not. He didn't.
He goes out and he catches 2 more touchdowns, and he's on the verge of getting to 1,000 yards for the season. And, he continues to be productive even when the team around him.
And speaking of not practicing much, neither did Albert Wilson, and he too had a decent game yesterday.
Yes, he did. He had a very, very good game as well. So, and Gesicki had a decent game. He was targeted 8 times. He caught 4 for 47, which wasn't a horrible game. Walford contributed a little bit. Again, early in the game, in the first half, Fitzpatrick was throwing to everybody and everyone. It seemed like it was somebody different on every play, and they looked really good moving the football. But the end result is 0 points. You come out of the 2 drives early in the game with next to nothing. So, with that being said, there wasn't a lot more to look at on the offensive side. On the defensive side, we talked about Baker's interception. Beagle had a nice interception, and, Needham had a subpar game, but he did have an interception as well. So we did have 3 turnovers. And, I think we talked about this a little bit yesterday as well, Mike, that I don't think we had a turnover on our side of the football, and we had 3 takeaways, and we still lost by, by 16 points. So, I mean, it's crazy. Usually when
Fitzpatrick had the fumble.
Right. But did he lose that fumble? Yeah. He did. Didn't they review it? Yeah, he did lose the fumble. So we did have the 1 turnover yesterday, and that was it. But the bottom line is, what I'm trying to get at is that we won the turnover battle, and we still lost by 16 points. So it's tough. It really is. Even with the turnovers, it wasn't a factor in the game. And we actually ran the ball somewhat decently yesterday. My God, our guys averaged, which is a shocker. Laird averaged 3.8 yards a carry, and Gaskin averaged 4.8. But
we actually had 2 linemen who looked like they were run blocking effectively yesterday, and that was Davis and Kilgore.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
If I talk about their pass blocking, I won't be as kind.
Probably not. No. He got walloped a few times yesterday, Fitzpatrick, that I didn't think he was.
Well, between the both of them, they gave up 5 pressures.
Mm-hmm. So, anyway, the positives that come out of the game,
It's over.
It's over. The season's almost over. We only got 2 more weeks to deal with the team as they look now, the 2019 team.
You said to me yesterday, it looks like preseason.
And yeah, exactly.
And that's exactly how I feel. You couldn't have put it better.
And it feels that way, doesn't it? When you're hearing names on the field, you're like, what the? I mean, I don't even know some of the guys that are on this team. And Mike, I can honestly tell you that really hasn't happened for me. And I'm sure you feel the same way, where you just don't know the roster.
Right.
And, It's hard. It really is.
You know, they've turned it over so much in the past couple of weeks that there are probably 8 or 9 players who we really have not seen play. They're practice squad players from other teams and very marginal players from other teams. Mm-hmm. They're guys they want to get a look at, and it's an extended tryout. That's what it is.
Exactly.
So, I think calling it a preseason look is perfect because that's really what it is. Hey guys, I wanted to break in here real quick just to ask a favor of you. On the app that you're listening on, if you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to the podcast. Hit like, leave a comment on your thoughts of the show. And if you didn't know, we do run a Facebook group. It's Miami Dolphins #1. That's #1. We talk Dolphins football 24/7, 365. We'd love to have you join us and share your thoughts. And once again, we want to thank you for listening. Let's make it a habit. We'll see you next week.
So getting back to the positive that will come out of this game is that, we kind of solidified. We both looked at it. We talked about it yesterday, and we kind of solidified at least a top 5 pick now. It would take an extreme situation involving a bunch of players for us to drop any lower than 5 at this point.
Yeah, I read somewhere that I think it was Dave Hyde who wrote that it's not possible for us to fall below 5.
Okay, so there you go. So that's what we figured without...
If he's right.
I think he's right because as we looked at it, we came up with the same conclusion in regard to that. So we're looking at worst case scenario, a top 5. With the way we played yesterday, it'd probably be closer to maybe to 3.
Well, there's actually an outside shot. We can get the first pick. I think we have like a 6% chance of that happening. So, anything is on the table. Anywhere from 1 to 5 is on the table still. Where I thought they were eliminated from getting the first pick, but actually they're not. It is still possible, but only a 6% chance.
Right, and that involves Cincinnati losing to, I believe, Pittsburgh after they play us.
Yes.
We're a very good team. So
it involves a lot of things besides that.
Right, and I don't see that happening. Now, 2 or 3, as we looked at it yesterday, are a strong possibility. So a lot of good things happen with other teams involved. The Redskins had the Phillies down late, and they wound up blowing that game. But a few of the other games,
Phillies,
the Eagles. Did I say the Phillies?
You did.
My God, I got baseball on my mind already.
Uh-huh. That's sort of like,
oh, lordy. So Jacksonville coming back and beating Oakland helped us. Because I don't think there's any scenario to where we would fall behind them at this point. Arizona,
don't call them Oakland anymore. They're now Las Vegas.
Well, they're Oakland. They're always going to be Oakland to me, Mike.
Yeah,
I don't care
too.
what they call them going forward. Arizona winning yesterday against Cleveland absolutely helped in regard to the draft because it looks like we'll be drafting in front of them as well. So there were a couple of good things that happened. And of course, the game last night, Buffalo beating Pittsburgh because we have their #1 as well. We want Pittsburgh to continue to lose. So there were a few positives that took place yesterday because I will tell you, and Atlanta as well. Atlanta was another big game, a game that you never expected them to win. They went into San Francisco and won, and that was a major shocker. So
you never know.
With the combination of those wins and our loss, we moved well up in the draft because I'll tell you what, Mike, if we would have won these last few games, there was a possibility that we were dropping maybe
we'd have won the last
10th.
2 games. Maybe we're 10th or 12th, somewhere around
exactly. And I mean, looking at this team right now, do you honestly want to be in that position? No, you want to be in the position that we're going to be in, because what people tend to forget as well, and we talked about this yesterday as well, is that it's not only the first round, it's the second, it's the third, it's every round through the draft that you're drafting very high in. And it makes a major difference, and it will, as long as you're drafting well. it makes a big difference in every single round. I mean, you get an early third round, an early second rounder, and the fact that we have multiple picks in all those rounds is a positive as well. I mean, it gives us the ability to move up in rounds if we see a guy that we really like. So there were positives that came out of this. I know you never want to lose, but again, you got to take the positives out of there, and you got to look at the good that came from it. And well,
as far as I'm concerned, I mean, yes, the draft aspect of it is good, and the fact the game is over is good, and the fact there's only 2 more left is good.
Mm-hmm. Because
I don't know how much more of that I can watch. That was rough for me yesterday. Yeah, how do you think we'll play against Cincinnati?
Mike, this is another team that has some players. It just depends on how Dalton is. I mean, you can compare Dalton to Eli. He'll throw interceptions, but then he puts drives together where he looks like Joe Montana. And Mixon is an extremely good running back. They gave New England fits for about a half yesterday, and then Dalton did what he does. He threw a bad interception, and the game turned completely. He threw a pick six, and the game just changed on him. But this is a team that we're going to struggle with again in regard to our defense against their offense. I think they're going to be able to move the football. I don't know a lot about their defense. I know that they've struggled all year. So
right.
I expect some scoring in the football game. But if our defense plays like they did in the second half yesterday, we're going to wind up losing. It's as simple as that. Some of the stats from yesterday in regard to Cincinnati, and we'll preview them we're coming back on Wednesday, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Dalton threw 4 interceptions yesterday, Mike. That's what he does.
Yep.
And it absolutely killed them because they were in that game. At half, it was 13-10, and in the second half, it was just one thing after another. But Mixon averaged over 5 yards a carry against a really good New England run defense. I mean, they're not a bad defense at all, and he went for 136 against them. And Bernard, their backup, went for 27, and he averaged 5.5 yards a carry. So they ran for over 150 yards on the New England defense, and I don't think our defense is comparable to theirs. So I expect them to try to run the football on us and, mixing in the pass here and there. And if Dalton doesn't lose this game for them, then we're going to have a problem with them. There's no question about it. And then we play New England the last game of the season, and that's up in New England. So that should be a struggle as well.
It should be. The question is, how badly will they need the game? And right now, it looks like they're probably going to need it.
You would think so. I mean, a lot depends on what happens next week or this Saturday, right?
Yep.
The game Saturday against Buffalo. They play Buffalo. And I'd love to see Buffalo beat them. I mean, I don't like either team, obviously. They're division rivals. But I'd love to see Buffalo just make New England travel.
Yes, I wouldn't mind that either. This whole cheating thing, and they deserve to have some bad mojo go their way.
They do. And you know what? I've seen it more this year than I have in a while with that team. Usually they got a horseshoe up their butt in regard to play calling and just stupid mistakes by the opponent. But they're just not good enough to overcome a lot of things anymore. They've slipped. There's no question about it.
Their offense has definitely slipped.
Their offense has slipped, and their defense over the last month or so has shown some holes. They're still very good.
Yeah. But you lose a guy like Gronkowski, you're going to slip.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Absolutely. You lose a key.
That's Mike, hard to replace.
You know what? Teams go through this year in and year out. And,
yes.
And New England, and New England's a perfect example of that. I mean, they have lost guys like Randy Moss and I mean, just one player after another on both sides of the football, but yet they're there every year. I mean, they're in the championship game or they're in the Super Bowl every year. So, Gronkowski, no question about it. He's a big loss, but the team doesn't function around one player. They still have a lot of pieces there, and they've always been able to somehow get over the fact that they've lost a guy, and this year it's just not happening. Not for them. I don't see it going forward either. Up to this point, I mean, you look at their record and you're like, they still got a great record. Well, yes, but look around the AFC and, you tell me. I mean, the Raiders were still in contention for a playoff spot, and they lost to a really bad Jacksonville team yesterday in Oakland when it was the last game in Oakland.
In their stadium.
In their stadium. You would think that these guys would come out fired up, inspired to play football, and they have a team that is playing for nothing go out and beat them. I mean, so this is what we're contending with and what New England and what everybody else is contending with in the AFC. It's just not a really, really good conference right now. There's not a lot of good football being played. There's a handful of teams.
You've got Kansas City. You've got
Baltimore,
and not a whole lot else. I mean, I guess you got to throw New England in there just simply because of their record.
And Buffalo. Buffalo's a pretty solid team. They're not a great team.
Yeah, they won last night, but they didn't play well.
They were fortunate. They went against a young quarterback that made some mistakes that wound up costing them that game yesterday. Tennessee and Houston are up and down. I mean, from one week to the next, you don't know what you're going to get out of them. They get blown out. Like Houston got blown out 2 weeks ago, and then yesterday against Tennessee, they looked great.
Right.
I mean, it's just really, really hard to figure out the AFC. The NFC, I think, has much stronger football teams right now. And this goes back to what I said a couple of weeks ago, Mike, that if we draft well and sign some nice free agents, we can honestly compete. I didn't say we will make the playoffs, but we will compete for a wild card position next year. I truly believe that.
So you're saying we're not that far from the Las Vegas Raiders?
No, among other teams. The position we're in compared to some of these other teams, woof. I mean, we're in great shape. I mean, if there's a team that can turn it around quickly, I mean, who would you rather be, the Dolphins or the Jets or the Dolphins?
Well, that's a silly question.
Or the Bengals or any of these teams, right? I know it's a silly question, but, that's what we have to look forward to is the fact that we're in a position to really upgrade this team next year, and we can make leaps and bounds going into next season compared to some of these other teams. The other teams that just aren't in the position we are. And we're not that far off from them. We're really not. I mean, people may think we are, but the other factor is, Mike, getting guys back that are not here right now, that are healthy, that are on the roster. Xavier Howard and McCain. And I mean, our whole secondary and Preston Williams, who looks like he's going to have a promising career. So, you've got guys that are already here that are going to be pieces of the puzzle that aren't here right now and playing for us, but are already here. So we're going to be ahead of the game just there without even bringing in these rookies and bringing in some
I don't know the
players.
exact number because I haven't looked, but I think we have like 32 players on injured reserve, or at least it seems that way.
Oh, it's
crazy.
It is crazy. It's absolutely insane. But the point of the matter is that going forward, we can make a big, big leap compared to some of these other teams because we're in a position to do that. Now, whether that's going to happen or not depends on what free agents we sign, who decides to come here to play for us, and what players we draft, and how much of an impact they are going to have on this team right out of the gate. So, we'll see what happens. But, I think we're in a great position going forward. And that's the positive that comes out of yesterday.
Yeah, I saw somebody in Houston called Laramie tonsillitis because of all his penalties.
That's funny.
So, it is funny. But, on the other hand, I know you wanted to get your Kenyon Drake comment in.
Oh, Drake. Yeah. He had 4 touchdowns yesterday.
He did.
And, I was, listen, I didn't hide it. I was always a big fan of Drake. And,
no, you did not hide it. No.
I'm not going to hide my thoughts on players and, whether negative or positive. I felt Drake was a very, very good football player and the guy that really going forward, I felt even if it was just in spot situations, could have been a really good, productive football player for us. But, he's gone and he's doing it for Arizona right now. And, good for him because he helped us yesterday.
Sure he did.
He gave us an opportunity to draft in front of the team he's on now by winning a game that we didn't expect them to win.
Right.
So now we will be drafting in front of Arizona.
There you go.
There you have it.
All right, so we'll be back Wednesday, and we'll talk about some of the former players and some other things. We'll look ahead to the Bengals and let you know how we think we'll match up against them. And that'll be that. Lewis, thanks for joining me this afternoon.
My pleasure.
And thanks for listening, everybody. And fins up.
Fins up, Dolphins. Keep your heads up.
All right, so that's our show for this week. I just want to remind everyone that the Finfans podcast is part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.